are here today in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol Hill, really, and we are meeting with state representatives as well as elected officials and letting them know that there are 8 to 10 million individuals nationwide suffering with endometriosis and the chronic comorbidities that come along with it as well.
We are trying to come together to just combat this, give patients help and hope, get some real change.
We're here today just to advocate for those many women who have been misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all and suffer silently. The ones that can't make it out of bed because they're hunkered over in pain in their beds and can't get up or can't eat or take care of themselves enough to even work up the energy to advocate for themselves. That's where I stand. That's what I'm here for. My name is Cameron Hardesty. I am from Lancaster, Ohio. I've got to experience my wife and her journey with this horrible disease that I've come to find out affects the entire body, all the vital organs it has been found in, as opposed to what they'll lead you to believe in the medical industry, that it only affects the reproductive organs. That in itself is a false statement, and it took us many years to find that information out. Just being able to be there for my wife and witness the countless doctors that, whether it was their malfeasance of understanding of the disease or I'm not sure what exactly it was pertaining for each one, I watched her struggle with simply trying to find out what was wrong with her and why she felt the way she did. It was a huge drop on our family dynamic, a negative one, I would say. Just experiencing countless doctor after doctor visit with virtually nothing to come from them. Finally, they opened her up and they were in her for about 30 minutes where they in turn wrapped up and told us that they could not find anything. I think one of the biggest issues with endometriosis is just the lack of knowledge amongst many gynecologists. And then the fact that a lot of these doctors don't even know the different ways endometriosis presents itself. Not a lot of this stuff can be found via x-ray, via video or ultrasound. So I mean, you surgically have to go in and that's when they'll end up finding it, if they're a professional, if they even know what it looks like. I don't know if you're aware, but endometriosis can look many different ways. It can be white in color, it could be red in color, it could almost appear as a sore of some sort. But anyway, just being there and being able to and witnessing all this malfeasance, I guess, within the medical industry, and knowing that there are countless other women out there that are struggling with this disease, often misdiagnosed or undiagnosed and never presented or found by the doctors. Simply due to the fact of them not knowing, not having the understanding of the disease itself, but yet claiming they do. We're here today just to advocate for those many women who have been misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all and suffer silently. The ones that can't make it out of bed because they're hunkered over in pain in their beds and can't get up or can't eat or take care of themselves enough to even work up the energy to advocate for themselves. That's where I stand. That's what I'm here for, to be a voice for those people, for those men and women, because not only is this been found in women, but there have been, I do believe, over 20 cases of men that have been diagnosed with endometriosis, which really in itself goes to show that, I mean, with it labeled a reproductive issue, it's not, and that's false. But anyway, I thank you for your time here today. And I'm thankful to just be able to be here and spread the word and help support those men and women with this horrible disease. My wife has been heavily involved with EndoMarch, and I kind of came here just as a bystander to more, support my wife through this endeavor, and I've gained a lot of understanding myself just recently. This is all has been new information for me, because before my wife 7 years ago, I had never even heard of endometriosis. I didn't have the understanding of the havoc it can wreak on your body. And like I said, I thought it was a women's disease just like everybody else. And really, that's what it all boils down to, is just being here. And I think the EndoMarch is heavily involved with us being here just to spread that information and to make.
My name is Chelsea Hardesty, and I am Ohio founder of Worldwide Endometriosis March, and I'm also founder of Getting the Better of Endometriosis. We are here today in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol Hill, really, and we are meeting with state representatives as well as elected officials and letting them know that there are 8 to 10 million individuals nationwide suffering with endometriosis and the chronic comorbidities that come along with it as well. So along with that, we are letting them know that discrimination is huge as well in the healthcare, which is preventing us from getting our proper care. So today we actually met with 3 individuals. Yesterday, Thursday, we met with, I think it was about 5. Yep, that would make our 8. And we are ending it here in front of the Capitol, closing out, holding signs, letting people know that we really need change, letting everybody know we will be doing something about our change. And what we will be doing is, if we don't hear anything happening soon, we'll be coming to the Department of Justice to require an investigation, and doing so, that would partake in looking into patients such as myself, as well as the patient deaths that are happening daily and just not being reported properly. The amount of harm that is being done to individuals daily is not being acknowledged like it should. Not to mention the knowledge in general is not being acknowledged, that it's not there. We are being harmed because of the lack of knowledge in the healthcare system, and this is where it needs to begin, is within the med school curriculum, all the way down to ACOG and their stipulations and how they run everything, and to them telling us that the standard of care is medications. So I'd like to just kind of go into a little bit of my testimony. Like I said, these patient stories are going to be the testimony for everybody worldwide, and the stories that we can get our hands on, including myself, and the stories that we can get out there into the open are going to be important, because it's going to be the eye into the real problem. You'll notice a lot of similarities when you start hearing patient stories, as well as the crazy differences, because endometriosis is a whole body disease and affects everybody differently in a multi-layer avenue, because it can affect the myometrium, the layers of the tissue at the top, all the way down in deeply, which represents the 4 stages of endometriosis. So when you go into those stages, somebody who has those 4 stages, like the 4th stage, may not feel something as bad as somebody with the 1st stage because of simply location. So if somebody has 5 locations that are just right at the top, but it's on somewhere that's super sensitive, they will feel it more than somebody who has 1 lesion deeply infiltrating, and they might not even know it. A lot of people don't realize it until they go through infertility issues. Then they do surgery and they realize that their areas are encompassed with the disease. For myself, I struggled beginning at 9 years old. I started passing out in school, and I started going through testing, and I had scopes and scans done only showing inflammation, and I had cysts at one point, and they started telling me when I came of reproductive age that the cysts would go away on their own, and it was just a part of becoming a woman. There starts, our discrimination factor already. Becoming a woman and tolerating the pain. Period pain is normal, you'll be fine, just take a few days to breathe and come back to work. And then when it becomes a chronic issue, then you're not believed, and then you start getting hospitalized. Everything increased for me as I started getting into high school. I was passing out way more. My hospitalizations increased as well, to where I was started to be admitting into mental hospitals because they were not finding anything on my tests. So they started thinking that I was crazy, cuckoo, On top of the birth control medications I was being handed, you can imagine the toll that was taken on my body from the medications alone, as well as the disease that was still just sitting there undiagnosed. I ended up going through a really rough relationship, some domestic violence. I have a chronic back injury because at that stage, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was sick for so long and told nothing's wrong with you, you're just crazy, that the people around me started thinking I was crazy too. So I was susceptible to the abuse from the healthcare system, as well as individuals around me that I couldn't stand up for myself. I look back at those days and I wish I could have done more for myself, but I was just simply trying to survive the disease as well as the relationship I was in at the time. Once I got that injury, I kind of found some self-realization, and I was able to get out of there and start focusing kind of on myself. And I tried to get back into work again, and it didn't really work out. Health kind of kicked me in the butt again. I wasn't able to get back into college like I had tried right after high school. So I started getting hospitalized again, and I started going through more tests. They started questioning Crohn's disease and cancer, yada, 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 but nothing really showing anything. So again, I was led to believe that it was just the stressors of my home life. I got with my wonderful husband in 2016 and ended up having a baby in January 2017. That pregnancy was okay up until giving birth, because giving birth, the contractions ended up lasting for 30 minutes. And I had like 5-minute breaks, whereas, it's supposed to be the other way around. You have 5-minute contractions and you get long, lengthy breaks. No, not for me. So it was a all natural labor process. It was crazy. We have a beautiful baby boy, grown 6-year-old boy now. But that was those contractions stemmed because of undiagnosed endometriosis causing trauma to my pelvic floor. And we didn't know it. So we continued on, and my husband started seeing how I was and how I was sick, and he urged me to take hold of my health. And just having that extra support, as well as my mom, really helped take hold of things. So we started with my back injury, my spinal cord injury. They told me that with the slip discs all the way from my neck all the way down to my spine, my lower back, they would have to do a thoracic surgery, and I was too young to undergo that kind of surgery. So we went for spinal cord stimulators. So I now have 2 spinal cord stimulators placed along my spine to help for pain control with my back injury, and I will admit it does kind of help sometimes with my endometriosis issues. After I started recovering from my back surgery from the stimulator implants, I started coming across issues that could correlate with my issues I've been fighting for a decade at that point. Endometriosis came across multiple times, and at the time I thought it was, a reproductive disease and whatnot. It came from your period, which kind of started making sense. But then the more I started researching and seeing more social media activists out there, like Worldwide Endometriosis March, Extra Pelvic Not Rare, and so many others, we really started picking up like, wow, the world doesn't know what's going on. My doctors might not know what's going on. Let me just reach out to my gynecologist, who I trusted at the time, and see what's going on, because I think I have bowel endometriosis, because everything just matched up. I reached out to him. He agreed to do a exploratory surgery based on my findings, and he told me I was clean as a whistle after a 30-minute exploratory surgery. Something felt off to me. I started doing some more research as soon as I got home from that surgery, and we found an endometriosis specialist, which is not a gynecologist, and they focus specifically on endometriosis patients. And they got me in for an emergency surgery that same month, less than 30 days after the first surgery, and they found endometriosis encompassing my colon, rectum, and bladder. So that kind of goes to show you one perspective of how the knowledge of one doctor really isn't comparable to a knowledge of another doctor, because here we go at the beginning of October, he tells me I'm clean as a whistle, and at the end of October, another doctor finds disease encompassing 3 organs inside of my body. So this is happening daily, not just me. We have other people here that are going to be speaking and telling you a little bit more about their story. And like I said, these patient stories, I've collected so far 30 myself. I've also started a petition that has well over 700 names on it right now on change.org. It's called the Endometriosis Reform Investigation Petition. Like I said, we're going for the Department of Justice. If we don't really hear much pushing and moving up here on Capitol Hill. So that's our goal. And we are out here just letting people know our presence and spreading the advocacy. We've had plenty of tourists and people just wondering what we're doing, our bright yellow. We're making noise, so we're excited. I'm blessed that I was able to get the access to my care that I was able to only because of my own research. If you think about the other individuals out here who are not getting that care and they're not acquiring the proper leads because their doctors just don't have that knowledge, it's unremarkable. There's some states out there that do not have endometriosis specialists at all. There's some states out there who doctors claim to be specialists and they just aren't. For instance, my gynecologist said he was an expert in endometriosis and he clearly was not. Endometriosis it is tricky. It is a full body disease from head to toe. It is inflammatory. It creates its own hormones, its own nerve endings. It can be, it could be found on some imaging, but it's very rare because, again, the knowledge for the people who know how to read those imaging is not there. So we just want the education and the awareness to increase. We need the research to change because right now research is focused on an outdated theory, the theory of retrograde menstruation, where our period gets spit up backwards out into our body and it just implants and gets stuck there and it starts shedding with our time of the month. That is just not correct. So any type of research that is focused on that to this day is not going to get us anywhere, because you know what? Endometriosis is not the uterine lining. If you look at the cellular analysis of it, it's completely different. Like I said, it also creates its own hormones and it has its own nerve endings. Uterine lining doesn't do that. It's affected by hormones. So there's lines here that we are just now realizing, and it is just phenomenal that people don't want to acknowledge that. Another crazy factor is our levels of discrimination we have going into this. We have, trans individuals, non-binary individuals going in for help, and just the way they look, they're not going to be taken in. We have limited cases right now unfolding of cisgendered men. Yes, men-born men having endometriosis. So how is it that endometriosis is the uterine lining if we're finding this out? We have also found it in fetuses, both little girl fetuses, little boy fetuses, still developing. So we need the awareness there, and I hope that we can get something done today and make way for the future.
So my name is Holly Sandeman. I am the California delegate for the Worldwide EndoMarch. I'm also the founder and president for American End of Endo Project. Both of these are important nonprofits for endometriosis because both of them are working in different ways to combat the same horrific condition called endometriosis. Endometriosis is a whole body condition involving the lesions of tissue that's similar to the inside of the uterus growing outside of it, causing pain, causing other issues depending on where it's landing. It can cause infertility in some individuals, and basically it's an overall destroyer of lives. So we are trying to come together to just combat this, give patients help and hope, get some real change, because we've kind of known about this more or less for thousands of years, and we're still kind of stuck in the olden days when it comes to how much help we're getting, which is none. So a little bit more than none, unfortunately. So usually right now it takes people 7 to 10, if not more years to even get a diagnosis. And then from then to get any help at all, I mean, you're lucky if you ever get any help. We're being bombarded with all kinds of medications and surgeries and all this ineffective trash that's just really harming people, oftentimes more than helping them. So today and yesterday, and what we've been doing is we've been meeting with elected officials, so senators, state representatives, and we've been telling them about the problems that exist and telling them about just the struggles that people are going through. And we're saying, okay, we've been promoting awareness. Now it's time for action. It's time to change things. We're done with this. It's 2023, people. Like, you would think that by now we would have a little bit better than what we have. And unfortunately, like I said, it's not a great situation. So we're just trying to get people the help that they need. Some help is available, but honestly, unless we get more funding and more actual research, I mean, we could set aside the funding all day long, but if we don't actually do something with it and actually research from an intelligent starting point, if we keep using these myths that we're using as a starting point and then building research off of that, or having pharmaceutical companies conduct the research or okay the research, we're just going to keep taking 1 step forward and 3 steps backwards, and we're over it. So that's what we're here trying to change. My personal story has many things in common with a lot of stories, but the thing that it has different than most of the stories is that I actually got help. There are millions of people in the world, in the United States, who are never going to get help unless we do something differently. So I went 16, 18 years and eventually got help with a legitimate endometriosis excision specialist, dietary changes, pelvic physical therapy. I fortunately was in a place to be able to do all these things through ability to fight with insurance, the ability to have insurance, the ability to learn things somewhat easily, to afford the foods that I needed, to, all the things that a lot of people don't have access to for one reason or another. So, I mean, I could go on with my story, but I think focusing on the other people's stories who are not getting the help that they need, I think that's really where we need to be focusing our attention at this point, because there's a lot of barriers to treatment, barriers to access that are in the way of the majority of people in the country and in the world. And those are the stories we need to be listening to, is those that haven't been able to get help yet.